Hello, and welcome to the My Heart and Mind podcast, where it's all about creating the feel-good mindset so you can make the most of every moment and reap the benefits of getting the most happiness out of life. And now, over to your host, Sally Crawley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the My Heart and Mind podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to Ray Bishop. He was born with Wolff-Parkinson-White Syndrome. It didn't affect his life too much until after he'd developed coronary heart disease. After years of Ray having CHD and being misdiagnosed, a heart attack was correctly diagnosed and a coronary artery bypass surgery performed. At this time, Ray had a confusion of feelings: relief at finally being taken seriously, anger at having been regarded as a hypochondriac, depression and confusion caused by PTSD, and a fear of what the future held. His condition was helped very much by meeting other heart patients at a support group. Being diagnosed with CHD taught Ray to make the most of his life. It also taught him that if he wanted to try something new, he should do it while he had the opportunity. Ray decided to learn to play a musical instrument for the first time in his life. This then led to him learning to sing and learning to play numerous other instruments. When Ray was first told that he had coronary heart disease, he was 48, and he thought his life was almost over. His first thoughts were that he'd not be able to see his young children grow up. He's now 70 and has 2 grandchildren. So 22 years after his CABG, Ray is now feeling fitter than any other time since his mid-30s and thoroughly enjoying his life. So let me introduce you to Ray Bishop. So, welcome, Ray. Welcome so much to my podcast. I'm really glad to have you as a guest. So, first of all, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your earlier life.
Well, my name's Ray. I was born with Wolff-Parkinson-White Syndrome. And I later developed coronary heart disease. Wolff-Parkinson-White Syndrome is a condition where there are extra nerve pathways inside the heart. Sometimes a signal goes the wrong way, basically causes confusion. And so when I suffered these episodes, it would feel as though my heart was missing a beat. And then it would instantly go from 60 beats per minute to about 250 beats a minute, miss a beat, and then go back to 60 again.
Oh, wow, that must be really chaotic.
And it could be quite traumatic for people watching me. I didn't realise that my youngest daughter had not seen me have one of these attacks until she was in her teens. And she was really scared and didn't know what to do. And while suffering these attacks, there's not enough oxygen getting to the muscles, and I just don't have the energy to explain what's going on. So it was quite scary.
For you and for everybody else.
Yeah. After I developed coronary heart disease, that led to me having 2 heart attacks. I've had a bypass operation, an ablation for the Wolff-Parkinson-White. I had to take early retirement at the age of 57. And now I'm 70 and enjoying life.
Oh, that's a really good ending, isn't it? You know, you're still with us, so that's brilliant. So how did the Wolff-Parkinson's-White affect you in your life?
Well, one of the things was that I knew one of my grandparents, my mother's mother. She died when I was 6, and she died of a heart attack. And because I was getting these Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome attacks, I've always had this feeling that eventually I'll have a heart attack and it will kill me, because I knew that there were problems with my heart.
Mm-hmm.
when I was young, these attacks didn't really affect. They didn't impair my life. They only occurred at rest. They never occurred while I was sleeping. They sorted themselves out. When I got into my teens, I was told about the Valsalva manoeuvre by my GP.
Right.
The Valsalva manoeuvre involves taking a deep breath, pinching your nose, keeping your mouth tightly closed, and then straining to blow out, but without actually blowing out. And this raises the blood pressure and tricks the heart into slowing down.
That's really cool.
And so you do. So people who saw me having one of these attacks, for one thing, it was quite scary for them to see my heart racing. And then it just looked weird, me doing this Valsalva manoeuvre, so that they had no idea what was going on. And when I went to work, and if I had one of these attacks at work, I get people panicking about whether to phone for an ambulance and trying to stop me from doing the Valsalva. And because I was so out of breath at the time, I couldn't explain to them what was happening. So what I started to do, if I felt once one of these attacks started, I'd rush to the toilet and sit in the toilet so that I could do the Valsalva manoeuvre without people noticing.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to do, is it like a one-time hold your breath, try to blow out kind of thing, or do you have to do it a couple of times to get the heart to slow down?
No, you just do it the once, and that's usually success. Occasionally it doesn't work the first time and you have to do it again.
Uh-huh.
But what happened when my heart disease developed and got worse, I then just didn't have the energy to be able to do the Valsalva manoeuvre. And there were times when I had to be taken to hospital. Also, it was more scary then because it started happening while I was exercising and also while I was asleep. And it was particularly scary to be woken up with my heart racing and not being fully aware of what was going on.
Yeah. I understand that it didn't hold you back from doing athletics, though, when you were at school.
No, I was recently reminded of that when a friend of mine found copies of our school magazine on the internet, and he sent me a copy of a reference to me. What I should also explain before is that I've always liked accepting challenges throughout my life. When I started at secondary school at the age of 11, I found that youth hosteling weekends were organised for the first and second formers. This involved getting a train out of London to a station that was convenient to the North Downs, the Surrey Hills or the South Downs. We'd spend the night in a youth hostel. The next day, walk about 20 miles across country, stay in another hostel on the Saturday evening, walk another 20 miles and then get the train home. And this sounded quite tough to me. So I wanted to do this to prove to myself and to prove to others that I could actually do this.
Despite
so
having
regularly. And that led on to me from the third form onwards. There were school camps in the summer in hillier parts of the country in the Welsh Mountains, Lake District. And I started doing those. On one of these mountain walks, the PE master who was accompanying us saw that when I stopped, I had one of my Wolff-Parkinson-White attacks.
Gosh.
And at that time I was wearing a shirt, a thick jumper, and an anorak, but it was you could still clearly see my chest thumping away. at 250 beats a minute through all his clothing. He thought that this was because I was so unfit. But it was because I was now at rest. And by coincidence, I just finished the walk and one of these attacks had started.
Yeah. I didn't want you to go with him again.
No. And also, when I started at the school, I was very unathletic, had no natural ability at sports. Each year there was a school cross-country race. There was a race for the junior race for the first and second formers, the middle school race for the third and fourth, and senior for the fifth and sixth. When I was in the second year, I came last in the junior cross-country championship. And I thought this must never, ever happen again. So I started training. I joined an athletics club. And by the time I was in the senior school, I was a regular in the school cross-country and athletics teams, and I was awarded the school colours for my contributions to the teams. And now, so knowing that, I'll now read this extract and it will make more sense to you now. So this is an account of one of the year's cross-country championships. And it says, perhaps the runner who showed most clearly the effect which training can have was Bishop, who came 14th. Perhaps his heartbeat no longer shows through his anorak when mountain walking. So this was written by the PE master who'd seen me after my mountain walk and who was also fully aware of how unathletic I was when I started at the school. And he was aware of how hard I'd been training.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't understand the Wolff-Parkinson-White and thought that I'd now got rid of that because I was training.
Yeah. But that's a lovely story.
That also shows just how vigorously my chest would be pounding, that it could be shown through all that clothing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an amazing story because it shows your tenacity of actually you're not going to be coming last again. And despite having Wolff-Parkinson's, you can still exercise and you are going to make a difference. And that love of life to reach for the challenges. Really great, really great.
And one of the effects that it had that I didn't think of at the time was that when I did eventually have my first heart attack, it was a blockage in the left descending artery, which is known as a widowmaker because it is so commonly fatal. The fact that I had built up my fitness meant that was one of the reasons why I actually survived that heart attack and why I'm still here today.
That's amazing. You didn't know it at the time, but obviously it was all about saving your life.
Yeah.
So when were you diagnosed with coronary heart disease?
Well, I was first diagnosed with it when I was 48, but I had started suffering from chest pains and pains in my left arm when I was about 38. I can first remember going to the GP when I was about 38.
That's really young.
Yeah, which was couldn't be anything to do with my heart because I was too young to have heart problems or heart disease. This time it was diagnosed as a trapped nerve in my shoulder. And several times I went back to my GP complaining of chest pain, breathlessness, and pain in my left arm. And it was diagnosed as various things over the years. When I was in my mid-40s, I was still running regularly, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to run. And after just a very short, mild jog, I'd feel as though I'd had an extremely difficult cross-country race, and I'd be struggling to stand and to be gasping for breath. And I explained this to my GP, and she said, "Well, what do you expect at your age?" Now, I was in my mid-40s, and I thought, I just never dreamt that getting old would be as bad as this. But there were other times. One of the problems I had was that there would be days when I'd have chest pain lasting for hours. And I was told that angina doesn't work like this. It doesn't last for hours. And there'd be other days when I'd feel perfectly all right. And I was given hospital appointments several times. And these invariably happened on the days when I felt all right. I now realise that what was happening was that I was having spasms in my coronary arteries, which weren't caused by exercise, they just happened spontaneously.
Yeah.
But because I was never investigated during one of these attacks, it was completely overlooked.
Because it must have gone back to normal when you weren't experiencing it, which was when your appointment was. Yes. It's that social law thing as well coming in, isn't it?
Yeah. And but also during this time, I realised now that my coronary arteries were gradually becoming blocked.
So how did life change for you?
Well, at work, as my condition was worsening, I designed heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. So I was working mostly in the office, but I also used to have to go out to construction sites to inspect installation, to carry out surveys. And I tried to gradually reduce the number of times I went out to site, and I'd get other people to do a lot of the work on site for me. And there were to where on my way to work, I'd get the bus to work, I'd get off the bus, walking between the bus and my office. I couldn't make that journey all in one go, and I'd have to stop on the pavement to rest. And when I was resting, I'd look in the shop window to just pretend I was doing a bit of window shopping.
Trying to normalise it.
There was a gentleman's outfitters on the way to work. I spent a huge amount of time looking at the underwear in their window. I must have given a strange impression to anyone who might have seen me doing that regularly. It also got to the stage where I couldn't cross the main road in one go. I'd get halfway across the road, have to stop.
Yeah, that's dangerous, isn't it?
So I'd cross where there was a traffic island so that I could wait on the island. It also got to the stage where I'd walk along roads that I'd never previously realised had an incline, and they'd now be too steep for me to be able to walk up.
Yes, it's quite a dramatic change, isn't it, from the story you were saying about the athletics and then all through life at such a young age feeling like this. And how did you feel about it?
Well, I was basically being treated as a hypochondriac because I was told Wolff-Parkinson-White Syndrome doesn't cause this effect. It didn't seem to be considered that I could have two totally different heart conditions. I was certainly being treated by my GP as though I was a hypochondriac. But on my 48th birthday, I had another hospital appointment. This time they did a thallium stress test.
What's that?
This is where radioactive thallium is in injected into the bloodstream. I then waited a while till it had reached the heart and was then circulated around the body. I went on the treadmill and the speed was gradually increased. While this was being done, my heart rate and blood pressure were being monitored. And a camera could detect where the radioactivity was in my body. So it could follow where the thallium was flowing through my blood vessels, particularly the coronary blood vessels. Then that was done in the morning, then went for lunch, came back in the afternoon when I was fully rested, and the circulation was checked again. And I had to go back, I think it was probably in 4 weeks, for the results of that. Because I had so many tests and I was always told that there was nothing wrong, this was basically what I was expecting to be told again. And the doctor who I saw had a big smile on his face and said, "Oh, good news, Mr. Bishop. You've got severe coronary heart disease. In most people, it just affects part of the heart, but in your case, it's the whole heart, from the top down to the bottom. It's that bad."
It's crazy, isn't it? And I can imagine you feeling relieved at being given such a severe diagnosis just because they listened to you.
So for him, it was good news because he sorted out my problem.
Yeah.
For me, when he started off saying good news, I was expecting to say, "No problem, go out." But he then said that I've got this severe heart disease that's much worse than they generally see.
Yeah.
For me, everything then started to go black. All I could think was that I'd never see my children grow up. My children at that time were in their early to mid-teens.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what the doctor said after that. And I was struggling to stay conscious.
Yeah, I can imagine you went a bit like I can imagine that you went into a bit of shock actually after being given news like that.
My wife was with me, fortunately, and so she heard the rest of what the doctor was saying. More tests were arranged for me. It was arranged for me to have an angiogram. And when I had the angiogram, I was told that actually I had very mild heart disease and that the thallium test must have been a misdiagnosis.
My goodness. That sounds like you have had misdiagnosis after misdiagnosis after misdiagnosis. You must have been so frustrated.
So having got the result of the thallium test, I thought, oh, now people are finally going to take me seriously and I will have treatment. But then to be told again, no, it's not to do with your heart. You've got mild disease, but nothing else healed me. And again, I think this was because my arteries were probably in spasm when I had the thallium test, and then the arteries were more relaxed when I had the angiogram.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, yeah.
And so I was told that if my conditions were nothing to do with my heart, then they must be to do with my lungs. And so I was referred to an asthma consultant. He diagnosed asthma, although I didn't have typical asthma symptoms. And I was prescribed an inhaler to take when I was breathless and had chest pain.
Right.
And I used this regularly and it had no effect in easing the symptoms. And this continued until early the following year. And on St. Patrick's Day, the following year, one of my colleagues, who was Irish, suggested that we went out for a drink lunchtime. Now, this was at a time when I was avoiding anyone at work seeing me walking. So I said, no, I don't want to come out. I don't feel that good today. And she said, "Oh, come out. At least have a glass of red wine. Red wine's good for you if you're feeling a bit run down." So I said, "Okay, well, you go round there and I'll see you round there." And so she went to the pub. I walked around very slowly, taking lots of rests. Had a glass of red wine, came back, again on my own, making my excuses. And then in the afternoon, I started getting severe chest pain and pain in my arm. And my heart was racing. And I said to one of my colleagues, "Can you phone for an ambulance? Because I think I'm having a heart attack." He phoned for an ambulance. When the medics arrived, they decided I was having a panic attack. They took me to University College Hospital anyway.
Good job they did, I guess.
But at University College Hospital, it was decided, well, it could be a panic attack. Could be to do with the Wolff-Parkinson-White. I'd explain to them about the Wolff-Parkinson-White when they asked me if I had any heart problems. And I said that by coincidence, the following week, I've got an appointment at St Thomas's about my Wolff-Parkinson-White. And they said, "Oh, well, it might be connected with that, but they'll sort it out next week." And there was probably a panic attack anyway. But they didn't look into it very thoroughly, and my wife had to come and take me home.
Right. Gosh. Were you still feeling poorly at that point? As in, did you still have the pains?
The pain had gone.
Yeah.
But I was quite weak by this time.
I can imagine.
Also, what had happened the previous week was that I was no longer able to walk to the bus stop to get to work. My wife had to drive me to the bus stop. And one day the previous week, my wife had driven me to the bus stop. The bus stop was at the start of the route, and there was a bus waiting there. My wife parked immediately behind the bus. I got out, struggled to walk from there to the door of the bus, paid my fare, and then struggled to get to a seat. When I got off the bus at the city, I had to stop for a rest after every few paces. When I came home that evening, my wife was parked on the other side of the road to the bus stop, and it was extremely difficult for me to get over to her.
Gosh.
So she said that you can't carry on like this. I'll take you to hospital. She took me to A&E at Lewisham Hospital. They kept me in for 5 days. And I had chest pain for most of the time I was in there. Because I had chest pain, they said it was too dangerous to do a stress test in case I had a heart attack. And I said, well, if any exercise is going to cause a heart attack, I'd rather have it while I'm in hospital with you.
Yeah, it's safe.
You discharge me and I have it on the way home. Anyway, they didn't do that. And after 5 days, they decided I must have a torn muscle in my chest.
Yeah, again, another misdiagnosis, I'm guessing.
Yes, and they discharged me.
Right.
So after 2 days after St Patrick's Day, 2 days after my so-called panic attack, I was at home, and in the evening I had incredible chest pain. I went up to bed, thought I might be better lying in bed. I felt worse. Came back downstairs. I felt worse. Went back upstairs. The sweat was pouring off me. but I felt cold.
Mm-hmm.
I felt nauseous and started to vomit. Didn't have any pain in my left arm, though.
Right.
I thought heart attacks always cause pain in the left arm. Also, because 2 days before, I was told at University College Hospital I had nothing to worry about, basically. The previous week at Lewisham Hospital, I was told there was nothing wrong with my heart. On this occasion, I thought, well, I suppose there's nothing wrong with my heart.
Heart, yeah, and it makes you feel reticent about going back, doesn't it?
My wife was in my daughter's bedroom with her while all this was going on. I didn't even tell her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was actually worried that at this time she was thinking I was a hypochondriac.
Yeah, I can imagine that it must make it's that reality thing, isn't it? You just you know what's going on, but nobody's really paying attention. And of course,
well, in fact, there were times when I was thinking myself, "Am I a hypochondriac?" And I'd go out and start walking along at a normal pace, but then find I could only get a few paces, and I couldn't possibly carry on. But anyway, during this particular night, I woke up during the night with just a terrible feeling of doom. And I tried to feel my heart, and my heart was so weak, I couldn't feel any pulse at my chest, my wrist, or my neck.
Right.
The next morning, I asked my wife if she'd take me to the GP. And the GP said, "Oh, no, if you get symptoms like that, if that was anything to do with your heart, that'd be really serious. So therefore, there's nothing serious wrong with you. That must be a torn muscle in your chest, like you were told at Lewisham Hospital." And she just sent me home.
Oh, Ray, that is you must have been beside yourself.
Yeah. 2 days later, I asked my wife if she'd take me to the GP again. This time I saw a different doctor in the practice. And I said, "Look, I'm sure there's something wrong with my heart. Can you send me to hospital for an ECG?" And she just felt my pulse and said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you," and sent me home. 2 days later, by coincidence, I had this appointment at St Thomas's Hospital for my Wolff-Parkinson-White.
Yeah.
I got the bus there, and my wife met me at the hospital. When I got off the bus, I had to stop every few paces on the way to the clinic to get my breath back and for a rest. Met my wife in the clinic, and the doctor in the clinic said, or the cardiologist in the clinic said, that no, Wolff-Parkinson-White can't cause these symptoms, so it's nothing to do with your heart. And my wife said, "Look, he can't." I was lucky that my wife was with me, because I just didn't have the energy to argue with anyone. I just accepted what anyone was saying to me. But my wife said, "He can't continue with life like this. Life's unbearable for him. He can't just keep being fobbed off that there's nothing wrong with him. Can you do some tests to find out?" So after arguing, they agreed to do an ECG and an ultrasound. And I was told to come back in 4 weeks for the results. In 4 weeks, my wife took me back for the results. And the cardiologist I saw said, "Oh, can't find the results. I'm sure there's nothing wrong, though." My wife said, "Look, can you find the results?" And he said, "Well, no, I'm sure there's nothing wrong." But my wife argued that he found the results. He went to the reception desk and the results were there. And he came back and said, oh, you seem to have had a heart attack at some time. You ever had any severe chest pain? And I said, yes, a few weeks ago. And I explained the episode. And and he was reading my notes at this point, and he then looked up and said, "Oh, yeah, sorry, have you ever had any severe chest pain?" So I explained it again. He then went out. I thought he was probably going to get a senior cardiologist, but he came back and said, "Oh yeah, sorry, have you had any severe chest pain ever?" And my wife looked at me and said, "Look, just relax, Ray." So I explained it again. He then picked up the phone and said to the person at the other end, "Oh, it's a bank holiday this weekend. Do you want to swap shifts with me?"
Oh, my word, Ray.
He then came back to me and said, "Oh, yes, sorry, yeah, you seem to have had a heart attack. We need to carry out an angiogram to decide what to do. It would take about 12 months to book you in for that. But don't worry, because if you have another heart attack in the meantime, we'll bring you in then to see you." And I was thinking, well, if I survive it, what happens if I survive?
Yeah.
Anyway, we came away from there. My wife spoke to our GP, rather. Spoke to our GP, asked if I could be transferred to King's College. And I finally saw an understanding consultant who said that if you think there's something wrong with your heart, you know your body better than anyone else. If you think there's something wrong with your heart, you've probably got something wrong with your heart. He did another angiogram, told me how lucky I was to be alive and that I needed a bypass and that he'd organise that as soon as possible.
You must have been so relieved at that point because it's your journey. I've been sitting here listening to you thinking, it's like I'm on the edge of my seat. I can see you. I know you're still with me, but it's like, how did you manage with all of that? But thank goodness you got that doctor.
Yes. And at that time, I had several thoughts. I had anger at the number of doctors who've not taken me seriously. I was angry that even when I'd had the heart attack, I wasn't taken seriously, and perhaps I could have had a clot busting drug then and I wouldn't have needed the bypass. Or I could have been possibly given a stent then and wouldn't have needed the bypass.
Yeah.
What I later learned is how important it is not to be angry and how important it is to forgive people. And because you can't go back to the case, these things have happened. That's it. Just forgive people. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. I've made mistakes in my job. Everyone has.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that so many mistakes were made with me, but I was lucky that I was still around.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really, really good frame of mind to have because, you've been through hell and back by the sounds of it, and to be so forgiving and understanding. Yeah, I agree. We are all humans and we all do make mistakes, but holding on to that anger would not have done you any good whatsoever. So I tip my hat to you, sir.
Something that was a great help for me after my bypass was that I was looking in a bookshop and I saw a book on the shelf called Forgiving Hitler.
Right.
I thought, what is that about? And I took it off and read the liner notes, finished up buying the book and reading it. And it was written by a Jewish girl who'd been brought up in Germany, in Berlin, during the Nazi period. Most of her family had been sent off to concentration camps. She'd gone into hiding with another Jewish girl. They'd managed to survive all through the World War in various basements, bomb buildings around Berlin. When the Russian troops arrived, they rushed out to greet them. The Russian soldiers raped them over and over. And the girl who'd written the book, after all this, she she would have liked to have emigrated to America, but her health wasn't good enough. She couldn't get a visa to go to America. Finished up going to Australia, lived with a Christian family there, started going to church with them and learned the Christian values of forgiveness. And she found that by forgiving the Nazis for all the terrible things that they'd done to her family, all of her relatives who'd been killed, forgiving the Russian soldiers who raped her, this great burden was now off her shoulders, because all the time she had this anger for them, they had this hold on her, and she couldn't carry on with life.
Yeah, she was the victim.
By forgiving them,
yeah,
all this weight was off and she could get on with her life. And I thought, well, if she can forgive Hitler for what he did to her, for the effect that he had, I can forgive these doctors who've done nothing like that. And so that was reading that book was a huge lesson to me, and that
made a difference
a lot.
Yeah. So what was it? What do you think it was that motivated you to overcome all of the challenges that you faced?
Well, one of the things that's happened is taking up music. One of the things, well, I'd been told that I'd had a heart attack. It taught me to make the most of my life. I now know that I will die. Up until then, death was something that happened to other people.
We think we're invincible.
We do. Death just happens to other people. The heart attack especially being told how lucky I was to be alive, that taught me that I will actually die, and it could be any time. So make the most of life. And the first thing that I started doing was that our children were now getting to an age where we could leave them on their own. So my wife and I decided that one day a week, one evening a week, we would go out together, go to the theatre, go to a restaurant, cinema, have one evening for ourselves, which was something we've not done for years, since before we've had children.
Date night.
So yes. So enjoy that aspect of life again. It also taught me that if you want to try something, try it while you've got the chance. If you don't like it, you've tried it and you know you don't like it, try something else. And something that happened was a few years after that, I had the bypass. I developed a problem with my heel. It was caused by having to wear safety shoes when I went on construction sites. I didn't go very often, didn't wear the safety shoes very often, but they were shoes with steel toe caps, steel soles. They didn't flex very well. They rubbed my heels, caused a sore point on the side of my heels. And just wearing normal shoes would press on these sore points. Mm-hmm. And the problem continued. And I developed a condition called Haglund's deformity.
Right.
It's usually caused in young women who wear excessively high heels. But mine was definitely caused by wearing safety shoes.
Okay, I hear you.
And what happens is a spur of bone starts growing out of the side of the heel. Mm. And I had surgery for that. And the spur of, I had surgery on my right heel for that. The spur of bone was ground away. A hollow was ground into the bone. And the idea was the bone scar tissue would fill up the hollow so that it'd go back to the normal shape. Mm-hmm. But what happened after a while was that the scar tissue just carried on growing and formed another spur. And the consultant decided the same operation was carried out again, the same thing would happen. So he decided that it would be better to reshape my heel by cutting the back of the heel off, cutting the wedge of bone out, putting the back of the heel back on at a different angle.
Gosh, that's rather traumatic by the sounds of it.
Yes, and it wasn't explained to me just how experimental the surgery was. And when it was actually carried out, it was the back of the heel was held in place with two screws that weren't screwed in far enough. They were too short to start with, and they weren't fully screwed in. Being an engineer and seeing my X-ray, I knew that was a problem. There should have been 3 screws. They should have been longer.
Right.
The result was that the bone didn't fuse together. It was dislodged. Another operation was carried out. That was unsuccessful. I won't go into details. But when I had the surgery to start with, I thought that I would be off work for 6 to 8 weeks. I'd always wished that I could play a musical instrument. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be off work for 6 to 8 weeks, perhaps I could fill that time by learning to play something.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
I've persuaded my wife to buy me a saxophone for my birthday, persuaded my son, he bought me a harmonica. And so when I had the surgery, I thought I'd be able to spend my time learning to play these instruments, not considering that laying on my back with my foot up in the air is not an ideal position to play a saxophone.
Absolutely not.
Anyway.
Do you have any photos of you at that time?
Fortunately, no. But because the surgery all went so disastrously wrong, I was off for longer than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
My leg was in a cast for 15 months on and off. During that time, I couldn't exercise properly.
Which was impacting on your heart, obviously. So
yes, and also I still had the same appetite, but was also comfort eating because I was getting so down with it.
Mm-hmm.
Put on a lot of weight in a short time, which I knew was wrong.
Yeah, but when you're sedentary because you've got a leg injury and you need to exercise, and it's so hard, isn't it, to do the right thing?
And it resulted in having another heart attack.
Oh, gosh.
And so that was when I was 56.
Right, okay. And so that was after the leg surgeries and after the bypass?
Yeah. And with that was caused by blockages in small arteries that were too small to put stents in,
mm-hmm.
too small to bypass, could only be treated by drugs. And I was already taking the drugs, so my dosage was increased slightly. But basically nothing could be done for me.
Mm.
And I was getting angina and breathless at the very slightest exercise or exertion or stress.
So how was your mental health through all of this? Did you get any support?
Well, I started suffering from mental health problems after my bypass.
Mm-hmm.
I was improving physically. I got to a stage where I could go back to work again, but then started suffering mentally. I was very depressed. My short-term memory was very bad. At work, I would phone people, and when they answered, I'd have no idea why I'd phoned them. I'd completely forgotten why I'd phoned. I'd get partway through sentences and forget what I was talking about.
Mm.
I'd forget simple words. I was extremely worried that I had Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Especially because on my mother's side, everyone who's survived heart disease has gone on to develop Alzheimer's.
God, yeah. So you look back, don't you? You're hereditary, and you start making assumptions. So no wonder you were feeling down at that point.
Yeah, and I started taking antidepressants, which were a help. I also started going to a heart support group.
Okay, what was the name of that? Where was that?
Well, I started to go to one at King's College Hospital, but not long after I started going there, funding was taken away from it and it packed up.
Oh.
So I then started going to one at Lewisham Hospital, and that was a group that was started by the cardiac nurses there, and that's called Artful Dodgers.
Okay.
And one of the first people I met there was a bus driver, or had been a bus driver. He told me that he'd been a bus driver and that he'd had a heart attack, lost his license because of that, and couldn't work anymore. And I said, "Oh, sorry to hear that." And he said, "Oh, don't be sorry. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It means I can spend all my time doing things I want to do now."
Oh, love him.
And he'd started working as a children's entertainer and magician.
Oh.
And he was thoroughly enjoying his life. And it never occurred to me that anything good could come from heart disease. And no one had ever suggested it.
Yeah.
I always thought it was just
downhill.
Steadily downhill, and that, so he's one of my great heroes.
Yeah.
And going to the heart group and finding that other people have had problems like mine, and learning how they've coped with them was a huge help to me.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, funding was taken away from that group. The nurses stopped running it. Primary Care Trust took over for a while. Then funding was taken away from them. And so at that stage, the heart group, like with the King's College heart group that I started going to, looked as though it would be wrapped up. But because it had been so helpful to me, I kept it going.
Oh, brilliant.
I'd like to continue passing on to people David's message that heart disease isn't the end of life. It can be the start of a new life.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with David and you. It is life altering. Yes, it is. It makes a huge difference, but it's what you do with that afterwards.
Yeah.
So you talked about music as well that had come out of the operation with your foot.
Well, because the heart, the heel surgery was so disastrous, it meant that I was off work for longer than 8 weeks. Started to learn saxophone. I started going to some private classes, but then found that Goldsmiths College, which is close to where I live, at that time they ran courses for absolute beginners in various instruments. So I started to go there. They told me that I should learn some music theory. And so I started going to the theory classes there.
Mm-hmm.
I started going to them, and they said that I should learn to sing. Singing is something that I avoided doing all my life because I was so bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
But they suggested that I went to Morley College to join their can't sing choir.
Oh, excellent. I didn't know that they existed.
So this is a choir purely for people who can't sing. And so I started going there. And even there, I was considered so bad that other can't singers would move away from me because I was so much worse than them. However, I did learn, or I found out that you can learn to sing. but the voice is like any instrument, and you can be taught how to operate it. And how
there's hope for me yet, then.
There is. There's hope. I recommend it for everyone because from there I progressed through other choirs for people who can sing, and then went on to solo singing classes, and now I sing at every opportunity.
Oh, wow.
I think I'm in 3 choirs at the moment. I sing solo whenever I can, open mics.
That's amazing. And the good thing about singing and music is it actually changes your mood and your mental state, doesn't it? It can be uplifting and raise your energy and give you confidence, and that singing and dancing definitely is really good.
Well, quite recently I developed a new heart rhythm problem.
Right.
At that time, my wife bought me a Fitbit, which keeps track of my heart rhythm. And I can see from that my heartbeat can be completely random throughout the day. But when I'm singing or playing music or listening to music, it tends to be a steady 65 beats a minute.
Oh, that's amazing.
Even if I'm singing solo in public, which you would think would be quite stressful, but still, singing still has this calming effect on my heart.
Okay, so I might have to actually get some earplugs for everybody I know and start singing. But I definitely think I might have to have a look for one of those can't sing choirs, because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and also what the classes at Goldsmiths, I carried on through the various levels for saxophone and for theory, and got to the level of a diploma in jazz and popular music, which is equivalent to the second year of the degree.
Oh, really?
And it would have been nice to have carried on, but that was when fees went up to something like £10,000 a year, which was totally out of the question for me.
Yeah.
But I learnt so much about music, including how to compose, how to write songs. And that's been a huge help to me in getting through both my heart problems and other problems that I've had in life.
It sounds like you found your purpose. And, and the lovely thing about it is making music and singing is actually, it makes you feel good, and it's making everybody else around you feel good as well. So, that's a brilliant purpose to have.
Yeah. And it was so lucky that I decided to start playing saxophone at that time, because that second heart attack meant that I had to retire at the age of 56 without having given it any prior thought. I'd been intending to carry on working until I was 65. So I'd not given any thought to what I would do in retirement. But by chance, I started to learn to play saxophone. Yeah. And when I got the saxophone, I thought it would just be something to mess about with at home. I never dreamt what it would lead on to. And it's led to just some wonderful events in my life, including playing with some of my musical heroes, performing in the London Jazz Festival, the Edinburgh Fringe, the Ealing Jazz Festival, playing in the 100 Club, playing in various festivals and venues that.
So it sounds to me, it's a bit like your voice wasn't heard as you were going through all of your heart issues and everything. Nobody was listening or paying attention. Yeah. But now your voice is heard and shared, and your music is shared with lots of people. Yeah. So you have overcome so many obstacles and managed to find the positives in life. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd share with others to help them find their way?
Well, if I can tell you a couple of the events where music has really helped me is that in 2010 we lost our eldest daughter. She'd had a very difficult time during her life.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear that.
She was born with severe physical disabilities. And after I learned to sing, I was singing briefly with Marsha Phoenix Gospel Choir. One of the songs that we learned was quite a simple song. And the words to it were, I feel like going on. I feel like going on. Though trials mount on every hand, I feel like going on. And we performed this on a Friday evening, the Friday before Christmas, 2010. On the Sunday morning, our daughter had an accident that led to her being in intensive care for 2 weeks and eventually passing away on New Year's Eve. When I'd been learning this song, I'd been thinking about Caroline all the time, our daughter, and how that was like her attitude in life. That though, no matter how difficult life was, she loved every minute. She had a wonderful sense of humour, thoroughly enjoyed life. And at her funeral, the choir came along and we sang that in the church. Though trials mount on every hand, I feel like going on.
And it sounds to me that she's followed in her father, or she was following in her father's footsteps, because as the trials mounted for you, you kept going on and on. So I think you wrote a song for the pair of you.
Well, after the funeral, I didn't feel like going on.
No.
There didn't seem any point to life for me, and I felt like just giving up. But then I thought about that song and Caroline's attitude to life and how hypocritical it would be of me to celebrate that attitude of her life, but not follow it through myself. So that song had a major influence on me carrying on.
Good. I'm glad that she had an influence on you.
Yeah. There's another song that means a lot to me, because there was a time when I was finding it extremely difficult to carry on with my work with the Artful Dodgers. It was getting too much for me. There was a particularly difficult meeting we had one Tuesday. I gave the group a lot of serious thought throughout that week. And on the Saturday, finally decided that was it. I would give up. And if no one else wanted to carry on the group, it'd have to be wound up. That evening, I was singing with another choir in a concert. One of the songs we sang was Can't Give Up Now. And the words to the chorus of that are, I just can't give up now. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me the road would be easy, and I don't believe he's brought me this far to leave me. And while I was singing that, I was thinking, this is the message, isn't it?
Yes.
I can't give up now. So
it sounds like you get a message from the universe from your music.
I had carried on. I didn't give up, and I've carried on with the art group.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So it sounds like music has been a really good influence in your life, especially seeing as you've gone from a non-singer to being completely taken by music and the lyrics of songs, etc.
Yeah.
Anything else that you could share with people that have helped you, or even how they could get involved in music? Well,
I recommend to everyone to get involved in music. Also, something that I couldn't possibly have believed is that I was walking, I was either using an invalid tricycle or crutches or walking sticks for about 7 years after my foot surgery. When I was finally able to walk unaided, I gave it a little while and then started to go to ballroom dancing classes with my wife. I'd never been able to dance properly, but why don't we give that a try? So we learned to.
So you've blasted through all your limiting beliefs here. It is amazing to hear your story, singing and dancing.
Sorry, we learned ballroom dancing, Latin dancing, and then that led on to Lindy Hop dancing. And even to the extent where we Lindy hopped with a group at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Oh, wow. I love a bit of Lindy Hop. Got to get my ankles back to shape.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I think people should always set themselves challenges. Keep active. Learning saxophone and harmonica are very good exercises for the heart and lungs. Dancing is very good exercise. So these are all very, well, I find them extremely enjoyable ways of helping my conditions. Also, through lockdown, I'm currently in, I play saxophone in a couple of bands, I play ukulele in a couple of bands, I think I sing in 3 choirs. None of us have met for the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite difficult for me to motivate myself to practice the various instruments that I now play. Until last summer, I had the idea of perhaps I could start busking.
Oh.
So that gave me an incentive. I checked that it was allowed at the time, and it was. I found a place near Sydenham Railway Station, which is near me. That's in a cul-de-sac. I thought if I go to the end of the cul-de-sac, I'm near enough to the people going in and out of the station for them to hear me, but I'm far enough away to be socially isolated.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to give me any money, I'll put a container down and that can go to my heart group's funds. But I played a different instrument. I would practice each week, and then on the Friday bus.
Yeah.
I tried a different instrument each week. Collected some money for the heart group, but it made me enjoy life during that period. It was great to see other people, especially when other people started singing along with me, or started dancing with me, or dancing to my music, or just people going past and seeing that it was bringing a smile to their face.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so that carried on until just before Christmas, when the latest lockdown started. And I'm looking forward to regulations being eased so that I can get back to that again.
Fabulous. And again, it comes to the joy that you're bringing to others, as well as bringing the pleasure for yourself. So that's amazing. That's really, really good.
So set yourself challenges. Don't think that because you've got heart disease you can't do things. You can, if you try things.
Absolutely. Try, see how it goes and adapt. Right, I'm going to kind of wrap up our bit of our chit-chat today. And just before I do, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Enjoy life while you can. Try things while you can. If you don't like it, try something else. If times are rough, if times are getting too tough for you, just remember how wonderful life can be and keep going. We all have tough times. We can get through them if we just remember how wonderful life can be.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much for all of those. So to remind everybody, so tell us the name of the group and where it's based.
The heart group is called Artful Dodgers. That's ARTFUL, Artful. And we're in Lewisham. If you look on the British Heart Foundation website, you'll find contact details on there.
Do you meet virtually while we're in lockdown, or is it a face-to-face?
No, but we're looking forward to lockdown ending we've got a Facebook group. It's not particularly active, but if you go to Facebook and look for Artful Dodgers Lewisham Heart Support Group.
Okay, well, I'll add to that in the show notes. What about your musical antics? Is there any way people can get to hear you or see you?
I play saxophone with the South London Jazz Orchestra. We play in various festivals, various bandstands, clubs around London, but as far away as Edinburgh, Liverpool, Brighton.
It's all UK based, basically.
We have occasional festivals in Europe as well.
Okay. Do they have a website? Do you have a website or a Facebook page?
Yes, if you look for South London Jazz Orchestra. Also, my daughter lives in Lancashire, and when I go up to visit her, I play saxophone with a band up there called Blowjangles, who are based in Blackburn. So if you Google Blowjangles, or look on YouTube for Blowjangles or South London Jazz Orchestra, you can see some of our performances there.
That's fabulous. I will add all the links to the website and the Facebook pages to the show notes so you can just click along and find out more.
Yeah.
Ray, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Your story, your journey has just amazed me. And as I said, I was on the edge of my seat, even though I could see that you'd come through everything. It just felt like it was one obstacle after another. And I'm sure that everything that you have said today is going to hopefully raise everybody's inspiration. And there's going to be a lot more people, joining the I Can't Sing choir, which I will be number one, and we'll be trying out new things, new challenges, etc. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
You've been listening to Sally Crawley and the My Heart and Mind podcast, a show for you if you've had a heart attack, cardiac event, or other life-changing experience and want to feel good. It's all about mastering your feelings and emotions so you can feel great and live the life you love. To find out more, visit www.myheartandmind.co.uk and note that that's an AND and not the ampersand character. Go be magnificent.